Life-changing events are often etched into our minds. Mine occurred 16 years ago while living in my hometown of San Francisco. Boom, the sound made when a door is forced open by a batter ram. Apparently, the cops have been casing my house due to the frequency of visits by my dealer, who also happened to be the mother of the guy I was dating. The police began ransacking my home, thinking they had hit the mother lode, with all the boxes strewn about. But instead of finding drugs, they found my belongings and never actually found the spot where my dealer had stashed her supply. The frustrated officer approached me with a small vial of meth and said, "What's this?" I looked him square in the eyes and I said, "Are you really going to waste the taxpayers' money on that?" Ironically, at the same time this went down, I was supposed to be on a plane to Arizona to go to treatment, but had kept putting the flight off because I still had things to take care of. I informed the officer of this and promised him he would never see me again because my flight had been rescheduled for the next day. I would not end up getting arrested, but I sure did get my butt on that plane the next day. Upon arrival to Phoenix, I was driven to Prescott to start a 6-month inpatient program. It is worth mentioning that this was at the request of my family, who had given me an ultimatum: either get help or be disowned. I was not done yet. Shortly after the 6 months of treatment, I would relapse, and after tiring of paying the middleman, I would enter into the uncharted territories of dealing. This lifestyle changed me. Any morals or judgments I had left went out the window. It became a game, a dangerous game, especially as a single woman. I thought about writing a book at one point because the things and people you see and experience in the drug culture can feel surreal, but this story is not about that. Fast forward 9 months into the game, and I would total my car, falling asleep at the wheel. How I survived, well, that was all God. But guess what? I wasn't done. I would be introduced to a 24-year-old bad boy called Troy. I called this my midlife crisis, as I was 38 at the time. I wanted to save him. He had come from a broken family and was freshly out of prison. And he offered me a source of protection from the shady characters that had wormed their way into my circle. Within 3 months, things went from bad to worse. As I mentioned, I had totaled my car, therefore making the run from Prescott to Phoenix more difficult. After running out of my own supply, Troy found someone we could buy from locally. I would borrow a car, and what would follow would change the trajectory of his and my future. The drug deal went bad, with the individual taking off with my money, and Troy was furious. He called somebody who told him where the guy was and instructed me to drive. In my mind, I envisioned him making some threats, getting the money back, but that is not how it played out. Troy, who was a felon, also suffered from extreme bipolar episodes and had no business possessing the gun he had acquired unbeknownst to me. I would find this out as we pulled up to the location. Bang, bang, bang. He began shooting at their car as they attempted to leave. I couldn't move. It was as if I was looking down and watching a movie and not actually living the part. He began shouting, "Drive, drive, I think I shot somebody, we have to get out of here." And I was frozen until he pointed the gun at me. As I stared down the barrel of that gun, I choked on the words, "Okay, okay," and I would drive. We raced back to my house, gathered some things, and as we were driven away in another vehicle, I looked backwards and saw a swarm of police cars turning the corner onto my street. I had no idea how much trouble I was in. My plan was to have somebody drive us to Phoenix, leave him somewhere. In my mind, I hadn't done anything wrong. He shot the gun, not me. But a blizzard would settle in that night, making it impossible to leave. The next morning, the person who picked us up agreed to take us to Phoenix. But before we left, I made one more stop to my house. As we left, I noticed we were being followed. We pulled into a gas station, and were immediately surrounded by police with their guns drawn, shouting repeatedly, "Where's Troy? Where is Troy?" Troy had not come with us. He was steps away at the hotel next door. We would be arrested, and Troy would go on the run. 5 days later, as I sat in a max security cell on a $500,000 bond, I was called out to meet with an officer who informed me that Troy had been shot and killed by the U.S. Marshals. Having never been in trouble before, and with the only other person that could prove it was not premeditated being dead, I went from facing 14 felony charges that included 2 attempted murder charges to being sentenced to 2 misdemeanors and placed on probation. But guess what? I wasn't done. I would get back into the game again, this time leaving Prescott to live in Phoenix. 5 months later. Knock, knock, knock. I wasn't expecting company. 2 strangers stood at the door, claiming to have hit my parked car. I would exit and be surrounded by undercover police officers. The gig was up. I recall a sense of relief. It had been a long and risky run of dealing drugs, and had this not happened, I would most likely not be here today to share my story. I would be handcuffed and taken to 4th Avenue jail to be booked. I remember a police officer asking me, "What is a girl like you doing here?" My honest response of being arrested for sales and possessions of methamphetamines did not elicit compassion. The look he gave me felt personal as he growled, "You ruin lives and families. You should be ashamed." I thought, could that really be? I mean, I was providing a service, supply and demand, right? If it wasn't me, it would be somebody else. But his comment resonated, and I came to realize just how much my actions had negatively impacted not only the addicts I sold to, but their loved ones, including their innocent children. After a series of court dates, new charges, and sentencing, I made my way to my temporary home for the next 5 years in Perryville Prison. I had a choice at this point: either do my time wisely or let my time do me. I chose the latter. I took an immediate interest in the humans I shared space and experience with. What brought them here? What were their backgrounds? Why do so many return? I began to write their stories with the hope of someday writing a book. While the book was never written, the experience would prepare me for my future career. At the time, my future was uncertain, but I knew one thing, and that was I would do whatever it took to make sure I would not be utilizing that same revolving door so many others had used before me. I enrolled in every program possible, from AA and NA meetings to Gavel Club, which is an affiliate of Toastmasters. I took random Rio Salado classes to keep my mind alive, signed up for programs like ASU's Inside the Walls, Gina's Team, Athena's, which are both leadership programs, and worked outside the gates for Arizona Correctional Industries corporate office, where I was gone for 10 hours a day and made a whopping 80 cents an hour. During my 5 years in prison, the relationship with my family was rekindled and we were closer than ever. They would help me transition out of prison. I honestly don't know how I could have done it without them. This support would be a fortunate barrier to my not utilizing that revolving door. So many are not as fortunate as I to have had this support. I wanted to be an advocate to help reduce recidivism. I was given the opportunity shortly after my release in 2016 when I was asked to join the board of a nonprofit called Reinventing Reentry. We put on simulations to help the general public better understand the difficulties faced by individuals who are being released from prison. The founder, Sue Ellen Allen, was both a friend and a mentor. She has since passed, and sadly the organization no longer exists, but similar organizations such as the Arrowette Foundation have continued to spread the message. Addiction has been a part of my story since I was a teenager. While I did not return to drugs after my release, my addiction issues were not done. I thought I could drink. Well, I couldn't. 2 years after my release, I was pulled over for drinking and driving. I was done. I tried and failed at my attempt to drink responsibly. Around this time, I lost my job and decided to make a major change in my life. I had by then immersed myself in AA and my recovery and decided to go back to school for my master's in addiction counseling. I worked full-time for a substance abuse treatment center while I went to Grand Canyon University and graduated last year with a 3.98 GPA. I now work for an amazing organization called Arizona Women's Recovery Center, serving women whose stories are similar to the ones I first gathered when I went to prison. But now I am actually able to help them on a professional level. I am honored, humbled, and blessed. These are common themes throughout my story. There are common themes throughout my story. Addiction, mental illness, incarceration, all conditions that are surrounded by stigmas, stereotypes, judgment, and intolerance. These conditions do not separate us from the human race or make us any less deserving of experiencing joy and love and happiness. What we need are people to believe in us, to offer us hope and support if we are willing to do the necessary work. The National Institute of Mental Health Disorders reported in January 2023 that mental illness affects 26% of Americans. That's 1 in 4 adults suffering from diagnosable mental illness. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration reported in January 2023 that 46.3 million people, 12 or older, met the DSM-5 criteria for having substance use disorder. The December 2022 report from the Arizona Department of Corrections Rehabilitation and Reentry Program states that 82.7% of inmates assessed to intake has significant substance abuse histories. Their report fails to mention statistics on persons with diagnosed mental illness. On February 17, 2024, the Federal Bureau of Prisons reported that 44.4% of persons incarcerated were there for drug offenses. Why do I share these statistics? To drive the fact that nobody is alone in this fight. My ask is not to give up on those who are suffering from the disease of addiction, mental illness, or people who've made poor choices. Be there for them when they are ready and actively working to change their lives. Never give up unless you or your family's safety is in jeopardy. Some afflicted family members may be finding themselves thinking, how in the heck am I supposed to do that after everything they've put me through? The answer lies in your willingness to seek support for yourself. There is power in sharing thoughts, experiences, wisdom, support, and resources with others who have faced similar challenges. With 1 in 4 people having diagnosable mental illness and 46.3 million people having a substance use disorder, I think it's important to provide resources for loved ones to utilize that support. Such organizations are Al-Anon, Parents of Addicted Loved Ones, and there's even an app called Covocus that you can download for free and that offers instant support for loved ones of individuals suffering from mental illness. I hope my story has offered hope and that everybody leaves this space knowing that they are loved, supported, and not alone. Thank you.